Hi, I'm Dr. B of Restorative Tutors, and I also have a podcast called The Answer is Trauma. You might see me looking up. I've put out some reminders because I really want to get real today about what's going on in our world and what's going on in the United States and what is happening, why it's happening, and how do we fight back. So today I want you to really understand that Monday, an unqualified and severely traumatized person is taking control of this country. And he is surrounding himself with other very traumatized and unhealthy individuals. So, in my podcast, The Answer is Trauma, I really talk about what's at the heart of our entire problem, not only in this country, but globally, and that is trauma. Trauma is a real thing. I know it's been spoken about a lot. I know people think, okay, it's a buzzword. It's a buzzword because it should be, okay? It's important for us to realize that the heart of what's going on in our country right now, with the fact that someone who's unqualified and detrimental to our country and this world is being allowed to become president of the United States, is because we as a collective are traumatized. We have been taught from the time that we could understand that who we are is not enough, that what we do will never reach where you need to be, that you constantly should be running, that you need to get more, that you're never going to have what you need if you don't hustle and fight and treat people terribly and do things only for yourself. If you're not completely focused on yourself and what you're getting for you, then you're never going to make it in this country. That is the criteria of the American dream, is that you constantly hustle, you pull yourself up your bootstraps, and you never care about others more than you care about yourself, but not in a positive way. So I'm here to talk about, let's change that mindset. Let's change those words that are popping out all the time about how we're never good enough. Why? Why aren't we good enough? Well, it goes back to our childhood. And it even goes farther than that. It goes back to our parents' childhood and our grandparents and our great grandparents, because trauma rolls downhill. Trauma goes to the next generation. Trauma changes our DNA, changes our genetics, changes the way we function in the world. Everything that happens to us that is traumatic and happened to our grandparents, and even in the societal norm, and even going back to far as slavery, okay? That has set us up for trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And where is the explanations of how we get out from that? Very rarely. There's a lot of people. TikTok was a great example of how we started to see communities coming through, healers coming through, sharing how we got out from under this traumatic umbrella that we can't seem to escape, and which is now affecting the lives of all Americans, because people unqualified, uneducated, and clearly needing to hold on to something are deciding that they're going to disrupt our world so that they can feel good about themselves. Bell Hooks, and I want to find this because it's so important. Bell Hooks talks about we can never go back. We can never find the love our hearts long for. But we have to let go of the grief about the love we lost long ago. And that's a bit of a paraphrase but what they are saying, what Bell Hooks is saying, is that we are constantly mired in the things that happened to us in the past. And if we're not mired in the things with us that happened to the past, then we're scared to death of what's going to happen in the future. And both of those places take us out from where we really are, which is right now. And that is why the concept of the present is always so important, because the present is really being here right now. I started looking at the Buddha and the words that he said, and I really didn't like the concept, because the first thing that the Buddha says is that we must understand we suffer. And I thought that's a really negative place to start. But then I started reading, and I listened to the story that he talked about of a woman who came to him whose child had just died. And she asked for the Buddha to save her in some way. And the Buddha's answer was to go into town and knock on doors and find one person who had not lost somebody important to them, who had not felt death. And then if they found that person, to come back to the Buddha, and they would solve the problem. But what really happened was this person went to every door in that town and could not find anybody who hadn't been touched by trauma, death, pain, and sadness. And what the Buddha really wanted that woman to understand is empathy and compassion. And to understand this human world that we live in and these human traits that we have need to be understood. And we have not been taught how to understand them. And that's why I'm here. My name is Dr. Bathy, and I own Restorative Tutors, which is a company that works with students and their families to have restorative conversations around education and for everyone to understand their own trauma aspects of school and how it affects how they move into the new world. And I started this because I, as a teacher, saw the amount of trauma and how it really debilitates our students. They cannot learn when they're traumatized. When you're a traumatized person, you're living on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sometimes at the basis level, am I breathing? Do I have food? Do I have water? And if those needs aren't being met, which so many times for our students and ourselves, they aren't, then we're not able to learn or understand or comprehend. We're in survival mode. We are fearful. We are waiting for the next shoe to drop, and we are not kind to ourselves. So it's imperative as we go into this inauguration on Monday that we can't just be angry and we can't just hate and we can't just stomp around and spew a lot of words. We got to start doing the work, and the work starts with ourselves. When COVID occurred and I was locked in my house for almost 2 years, I decided that that was the time I was going to take to end this cycle that I had been living my whole life of fear and worry and waiting for the next shoe to drop and having these things occur to me and not being able to control anything and feeling the need to control so strongly because of my fear that was built from my trauma as a child that I was never ever able to appreciate or respect or honor where I was in life. And so during that time of COVID, and I think a lot of people kind of did this, I started to look at my life and really decide, what do I want? What do I want it to look like? Who do I want to be? And I realized that my inner child, that grief that had stopped me in my tracks of aging through understanding how to handle loss of love or pain, I was 8 years old, and everything I handled, even though I was a grown woman, I did from a mindset of the 8-year-old little girl who was afraid to be left, afraid to be hurt, afraid to be disappointed, afraid to be alone. That was my biggest fear. And here I was facing my biggest fear of being alone with nobody in my life. And instead of doing it as a person who had no control over how they processed that situation, I decided that I was going to love myself the way I've been looking outside of myself my whole life, looking to other people to validate me, to appreciate me, to give me the thumbs up that I was okay, that I was important enough, that I mattered. Nobody can do that for you. Nothing outside of you can give you that. You think it does, but it never does. And that's why we see these oligarchs constantly wanting more, constantly building monopolies, constantly taking more from other people because they too are traumatized. Not only is the future president of our country a narcissist, and where does that come from? When I read Mary Trump's book, it hit me really hard where and why we see that person's behavior at such a toddler level. Because when he was 2, his mother was taken to a sanitarium, and my guess is he was left alone quite a bit. I'm not thinking his dad was picking him up and hugging him a lot, and that's speculation on my part. But from Mary Trump's response and understanding, it appears that he was kind of left. And so that means that person stopped at 2 emotionally, which would explain the behaviors we see, not just in our country, but even across the world and how the responses are occurring. This is a traumatized person that's now going to be in charge of our country. And not only that, but they're surrounding themselves with very, very traumatized people, like the 3 tech bros. Each one of those people, I've been doing my research, each one of those individuals, and I think you know who I'm talking about, have either abandonment, by fathers or authoritarian father figures who expected incredibly high, outcomes from them. Look at how they behave now. They cannot fill the coffers enough. They cannot have enough power. But everything that they do is to tell that daddy that I'm worth it and you messed up. It's another hole they're trying to fill with money and power and greed and hurting other people, because that's what hurt people do. They hurt other people. So we are seeing across our stage of our country trauma and control of our politicians and elected officials. So how do we combat that? Well, we can vote, which we try to do and should do. But the biggest power that we have, as we started to see on TikTok, was by healing ourselves and building community. If we need from other people like stores, and if we're looking at big of the conglomerates that own everything, AKA Wall-E that Disney showed us, then we are just putting ourselves in those lounge chairs and sitting our butts down and not doing anything. And then whatever happens, we kind of have to just accept, because we're doing nothing to stop it. But if we work on ourselves, if we start small, we start with ourselves, we start going down those paths of healing ourselves, finding out where the trauma, how old were you when you felt that first trauma that struck you to your core? That's how you respond to things that happen from that age point. And one of the most important things you can do, and what I did during COVID, was I told that little 8-year-old little Lorena that I had her. I had her back. I was going to protect her. She would be safe with me. And then that's what I did. I changed the way I talked to myself. I no longer talked about my faults and what I looked like. And let me tell you, I said some horrible things to myself in the past. I decided that I was going to love myself the way I wanted other people to love me. And I started talking to myself and treating myself with respect and kindness, compassion, and love. And as I did that, I felt the bouncing balls in my head of ideas and thoughts and things that were constantly going and keeping me distracted from myself started to go away. And I started to realize that I had such power within myself to not respond, to set boundaries, to let go of people that no longer were healthy for me to be around, to accept when things occurred that I had no control over, which is pretty much everything, really. You really only have control over how you react to what happens to you. When I started letting go of expectations of other people that I had created stories of in my head, when I started to realize that everybody was unhealthy and that they came from where they were from, when I started to look at my own parents and their parents and my great-grandparents, it made so much sense. It showed me that all of these adults walking around that I was supposed to feel safe and protected by and didn't in a lot of situations were because they didn't feel that they were actually able to keep me safe. They used a lot of their own rhetoric that they got when they were kids on me. And in a generation like Generation X, where we were told children should be seen and not heard, we were told we were invalidated. Our names, our words, our power was invalidated. So on this channel, what I'm going to do is talk about the real stuff. And this is how I do it. I'm honest. I'm in your face. I do my research. I know what I'm talking about. I will give you book referrals that I think you should take a look at. I will tell you to listen to certain people who have really figured out how we get there. I believe one of the biggest places we can change things is our education system. Why do you think they want to destroy our education system? Why have they been dismantling and destroying it for so long? Because the power of the people is to learn how to speak, how to heal, how to think, and how to ask questions critically. They don't want that. They want us afraid. They want us scared. They want us against each other. They want us hating our brothers and sisters. Perfect example is all of us that have gone to Red Note have found that the Chinese people are the most warm, welcoming, kind, and happy people. That's not what we've been told. And in fact, what we're finding is that if we turn the mirror back on ourselves, we are really the unhappy, suppressed, controlled mindset that everyone in our country has told us China is. And so we need to start paying attention to what people say. And we need to start reading and researching to understand, who are we electing to office? Who are we allowing to lead us? Leadership is important, and leadership comes from not control. I studied this in my doctorate, okay? And the biggest thing that we need to understand, that leaders should not be the ones out front telling everybody, do what I say. They shouldn't be the sage on the stage in the front of the room, yapping at us. Our leaders should be moving the obstacles and challenges out of our way so that we can succeed, whether that's a business, a country, or a family. Leaders are those that we trust. Leaders are those that we believe have our best interest in mind and will move heaven and earth to assure we can get there. And so it really matters who your leader is, and it really matters where you're coming from. This is an individual job. You taking a look at yourself and really looking at yourself and really looking at your past and understanding that all of those things that your grandparents and your parents and your great-grandparents believed have trickled down to you in some way or another. It's time for us to take our own lives in our own hands and make decisions about what and who we want to be, to love ourselves unconditionally, to look to the fact that we in this moment, what are we grateful for? I know it sounds trite, but with gratitude in your heart, it's really hard to be in a negative space and talking bad about yourself. When you start to feel like, I'm overwhelmed and I can't take this and I don't know what to do and I'm so angry and I cannot accept what's going on, you can do nothing about that. But what you can say is, I'm grateful that right now I can see the sun shining, that I can breathe fresh air, that I had some breakfast this morning, that I slept in a bed last night. Sometimes it's really basic. I can see, I can breathe, I'm standing on my own 2 feet. And if you don't have those things, what are you grateful for? What makes you happy? These are the things we should be focusing on, not what we've been made to focus on, not having enough money to pay for this, not having health care. All of these things that are taken away from us make us have to focus on those things even more. And when we focus on the things that are negative, guess what happens? More negative stuff comes to us. When we focus on what is positive, what is joyful, what is glorious, what is loving, what is caring for ourselves, then those things come to us. We are energetic frequency beings. So look around, get into some research, and discover that we as beings are a completely energy. That means that energy affects us. And right now, there's a total court press, full court press on making us afraid, on making us defeated, on making us victims, on making us so scared we're not going to do anything about changing. And so today, this video is to tell you, do not accept that. Do not accept someone else's illness and trauma affecting your life. How do you do that? You focus on your healing. You focus on yourself. You focus on, where is my pain and why is that painful to me? You focus on, how do I fix this? That's what you focus on, because that's all you can work on right now. That's all you can change. You start to see others with compassion. That hatred, that need to hate other people and control those that are the weakest, to go after groups and people that are working so hard to be themselves. To go after those people to shows you are just the biggest bully on the planet. And that's what our leaders are right now. We are being led by a bunch of bullies, by a bunch of insecure people who hate themselves, really. So don't let that rule your world. That's where you take yourself back. You say, nope, I'm not living in that place. I'm simplifying my life. I'm only going to be around people that support me and love me. I'm going to create a community where I can help other people with what I'm good at. What are my skills? But number one is you start to heal yourself. You look back at where your trauma existed. You look back at those times, you start writing about them, you start putting it on paper, you start realizing that is not who you are. You are a glorious being, filled with all of the power of the universe. Where you focus your energy is where your life goes. So if we don't want what's happening right now, if we don't want to feel like we have no power, then take your power back by focusing on healing your trauma. Because your trauma affects your kids. And that trauma will affect their kids. And it will continue to spill down on the generations below us until we were responsible enough to do the work ourselves and heal ourselves. And once you do that, those thoughts stop pinging in your head. You stop believing the words outside of you and start knowing who you are. And when we all do that, when we come together as a collective to do that, we can't be defeated. So now, today, I'm asking you, instead of just being angry tomorrow and frustrated by the situation, take your strength and turn it on yourself and heal that pain that may be keeping you from where you need to go. Take that pain that's occurred to you and help others with it. Take that pain and build community so that others can work together to support the love that we need to give to ourselves. Stop looking outside of yourself to heal your pain, to find your love, to do anything. Look at yourself first and ask, what do I need? And then honor that. We put our own needs so far to the side that we forget. Without putting that mask over ourselves, we're not able to help other people. So today I set out a call to action. There is plenty of information everywhere on the internet about how to heal trauma. I'm telling you how I did it, and I will talk more about this on this channel. But get started. Start looking things up. Start with Bell Hooks. Her book, All About Love, is fantastic, and I'm only 5 pages in. Start reading again. Start finding places where you can feel that you hear yourself talking to you. All right? Okay. Thank you for listening. I know this is a long video and they won't all be this long, but I need to introduce myself and I needed you to understand what this is about. I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell you straight up how we do this because we don't have time to flower the language. We need to start getting serious and taking action. And that is my hope. I'm Dr. B of Restorative Tutors. You can find me on Substack. I have a podcast on both Spotify and on Substack called The Answer is Trauma, where I talk about how our society has affected how we are and the trauma that came from them. I hope that you will, in the comments, tell me, I've already started working on my trauma, or where do I start to look? I will start to put people down in books I think that could help you. But just go on the internet and ask, how do I heal my trauma? There is so much information on there, and then start taking those steps. I'm going to be here to help you and support you, and you can ask me questions. I will do my best to give you the answer if I know it or find it if I don't. Okay? We're in this together. We're here to support each other, and I'm here to support you. So start tonight. Start with a journal and a pen. And just start writing. Don't worry about the punctuation. Don't worry about the words. Don't worry about if you mess up. Nobody's going to see this but you. And start opening those doors that you've been too afraid to open because I'm here to help you. And there are so many people in this world that will also stand by you to help you. You're not alone. Okay? So until next time, I wish you a great day. and always be in the present.